Hey, welcome to the BIA Live Recruiting Podcast. I'm Kevin Noon. I'm joined by Joseph Hastings. That countdown with the music sounds so dramatic. It makes it seem like such a huge deal, but we're here to talk about this week in Ohio State Buckeyes recruiting, a couple of camps this week on June 8th and June 9th. Plus, we're getting ready to go into what's technically considered the June 11th recruiting weekend. Joseph, first and foremost, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing today, man?
Doing well. Glad to be talking a little recruiting. Glad to be off my feet. Let me tell you, 2 days of standing around at camps from essentially 8:30 to 5:30 or 6 is it's a lot on these old knees. I'll tell you. It's good to be back, but a lot of standing around.
Yeah, those camp experiences are always tough, especially when you have two sessions, the AM and the PM, like Ohio State hosts those sessions. So good thing you made it out well. You're going to have the same thing next week, too, with back-to-backs on the 15th and 16th. So I know you're getting prepared for those.
Well, and honestly, I won't be at the camp on the 16th because I'll be down in Atlanta with you at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge. Yep. So I will do the 15th, turn around, wake up early on the 16th, fly down to Atlanta. We'll have an opportunity, hopefully, to talk to a lot of Ohio State commits and targets. We have the upperclassmen camp on one day, and then we have the underclassmen camp the following day. So it should be a good opportunity coming right out of all this other coverage. And then, of course, it's followed up by another Ohio State recruiting weekend on the 18th. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Let's talk a little bit about – let's come out of the recruiting weekend of June 4th while we're at it. Let's kind of start there. And while Ohio State hasn't landed a commitment from somebody who was here on the 4th, it did land a commitment from somebody who was here shortly thereafter on an unofficial visit in advance of his official visit with Caleb Brown. And why don't you tell everybody about that whole situation?
Yeah, so Caleb Brown was somebody who started trending toward the Buckeyes a few weeks ago, and he was somebody who we had heard Michigan and Notre Dame, a couple of the schools be in the mix for his services, but Ohio State really made a strong push. Once again, we have to wonder if the transfers of Mookie Cooper and Jameson Williams led to that happening, because we were suspecting initially that Ohio State was going to look at two wide receivers in this class, and then once those two hit the portal, it really made it a possibility that they could actually take four. So, they started amping up their pursuit of Brown. He took a one-day unofficial visit, and that's all that he needed to see in order to commit to the Buckeyes, which is huge for the program, because following that June 4th through the 6th official visit weekend, we were kind of suspecting that they would land at least one commitment from one of those prospects. We saw a lot of future casts pouring in for Zion Branch. The possibility of Emil Wagner, in-state offensive lineman, committing is always there. But then just for them to get a little bit momentum going this month was huge for them. It's a huge commitment. Caleb Brown is somebody who's multidimensional on the football field, has a lot of speed. He's not the tallest guy in the world. He's 5'11" at best, but he's a strong dude. He's tough to bring down. Once again, has a lot of speed, has really good vision, and I think he's somebody you're going to use in that, jet sweeps in the slot. He's going to take multiple roles in the offense there for Ohio State. So, yeah, definitely a really good pickup. He's not like Keon Grace or Caleb Burton in terms of what he brings to the field, but he does bring that a different type of impact. So, yeah, solid addition, top 100 overall kid out of an area that Ohio State hasn't been, recruiting since Ryan Day. Successfully recruiting, I should say, since Ryan Day got there. They haven't signed a prospect from Illinois since the 2016 cycle in Tough Orleans. So, yeah, really good pickup for the Buckeyes this past week.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to hop on Columbus radio this past week, and I said, I think if you're an Ohio State fan, one of the things that should make you just as excited about anything is 3-4 weeks ago, he was trending toward Michigan. And, so not only to land the kid yourself, but to keep him away from Michigan. Not that Michigan has necessarily shown that it's known what to do with top receivers, and it's had them. It's had them in guys like Tariq Black and DPJ and guys like that, and they just haven't been able to utilize them. So it's addition by addition, and it's addition by subtraction both. So it's a huge pickup, and once again, just goes a long way to show that the Ohio State recruiting effort, especially at receiver under Brian Hartline, is capable of doing some pretty special things.
Yeah, at this point, it's pretty much if Brian Hartline wants a wide receiver, then you should figure that wide receiver should be not only, I mean, I don't necessarily think you should be an Ohio State lean, but at least the Buckeyes would be in the top three. Just Ohio State has so much going in favor of them when it comes to wide receiver recruiting. The fact that you have you've signed three, well, not Quinn Ewers yet, but they're going to have top three quarterbacks in 3 consecutive cycles. You have Kyle McCord, C.J. Stroud. And then Quinn Ewers waiting in the wings. And then you also have an offense that's very friendly, pass friendly, with their aerial attack. So any top wide receiver is going to be considering the Buckeyes. And then also the ability to get developed by someone like Brian Hartline, who has NFL experience, who's put together a solid resume in his short tenure as wide receivers coach at Ohio State. Yeah, I'm just expecting the Buckeyes to sign number 1 wide receiver recruiting classes as long as Hartline's there.
Exactly. So, let's jump into the June 8th and June 9th camps, and I'm going to hit a name just talking about wide receivers. Carnell Tate was on campus. He's a 2023 wide receiver, originally out of Chicago. He's going to be at IMG Academy, 2 years at IMG Academy. Certainly seems to already have a lot of strong feelings toward Ohio State. He had an opportunity to do some working out with the staff. We didn't get to see a lot of it. The end of the camp on the 8th was really disjointed with some weather that had moved near the area or whatever. So, by the time we caught up with Carnell, he'd already gone through his workout. But, somebody, if you look at the tape, already quite impressive and kind of fits the mold as Ohio State is going to be a destination again in 23.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I spoke with Carnell about a month ago. This was, a month after he had received the offer and scheduled the visit. And he told me that he believes he would fit in well with Ohio State's offense. He's somebody who thinks he can create separation, can play in the slot, can play in the outside too. We have him as the 8th ranked wide receiver in the 2023 class. And Notre Dame is obviously a school that's also in the mix for him as well as Ohio State. I think those two are kind of the front runners at this time. So, yeah, definitely very impressive that Ohio State was able to get not only him on campus for a multi-day visit, but, you had Richard Young and Trayon Webb. You had a couple of other big-time rising juniors on campus as well. So as much focus as there's been, and rightfully so, on the official visitors, as we'll get to this weekend and following weekends, the fact that they've been able to get, players like Carnell Tate and, Luke Montgomery and all these big-time rising junior targets for them. It's really impressive.
Absolutely, and we'll get to some of these other guys here as we kind of go through, and we have a couple of questions that have been sent to us on Buckeye Grove. We'll try our best to answer them. Sometimes the questions are gigantic, and it's hard for us maybe to be able to really give a great answer on it because I don't know if there is an answer for some of these, but let's go back to the camp on the 8th. And one of the biggest storylines on the camp on the 8th is that the PPI group, the Europeans, were in town. And that meant that we got to see Hero Canoe. We got to see Lucas Simmons, a 6'8.5" offensive lineman from Sweden. We had a chance to see Theodor Olstrom, I think is what the last name is, a 2023 tight end out of Sweden, a big kid, 250, soft hands, able to move around. I think that it's really interesting to see just the proliferation of American football. We just call it football here, but American football in Europe, and how there are kids now that are saying, well, yeah, I did play soccer. Yeah, I did play basketball, but I've always been drawn to American football. And while we're not to where the NBA is in terms of it being truly an international game, we may be just, very much in the early stages where football is becoming more popular in certain countries.
Yeah, this is big time just for the sport in general because, look, we know that American football talent is, obviously going to be the priority, but you're starting to see an influx of international players, starting to get recognized, and programs like PPI, really put the spotlight on these kids and allows them to receive these offers because Olstrom, I believe, only had one offer prior to this month and has picked up double-digit offers since then just because, PPI has facilitated this camp tour that they've been on, being able to visit schools like Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and really put these kids on the national spotlight, specifically Hero Canoe. What's really interesting about Canoe is not only is the fact that he's 16 years old, he hasn't turned 17 yet, so he's a young kid. He had only played football for 2 years prior to this year, and spring football was his first live action, being able to play the game live for the first time. So I think that's really interesting. It really goes to show his potential, and he already looks like one of the top defensive tackles in the nation. Just his potential is, it's through the roof. He's really got a lot of talent. He can move well for his size. He would be a versatile prospect for the Buckeyes to add. But just like you said, having these international players, it elevates the game. It's only good for the game to discover talent like this that otherwise would have gone unnoticed.
And Hero Canoe, let me tell you, he certainly looks the part. We have some photos of him up over on Buckeye Grove. Recently moved into the Rivals 100 because remember he comes from Germany. He ends up going to California. California has a delayed season. They don't play until the spring. It's definitely an abbreviated season at that point. Not necessarily playing against your, Mater Days and your Long Beach Polys, playing in a smaller league, smaller classification or whatnot. So once we get the opportunity to get to see him go against some dudes, I think that it's going to be real there. But Larry Johnson certainly took a lot of time working out with him. Ohio State, very interested. And I think one of the things that was most interesting is that Hero Canoe stayed a second day to go through and just hang out around campus a little bit more. It was both he and Olstrom, the tight end, spent 2 days in Columbus. We're going to catch up with the rest of the PPI group in Texas, I believe, was what was going to be that following stop for them to get to. So certainly a good indication. I felt good enough just based on the way that he was spending time with Larry Johnson and everything else. I put in an early future cast. Now, is that based on anything I was told? No, not really. Is that more of just a gut feeling? Sure. Yeah, I think it was a gut feeling, but sometimes you need to do that. And honestly, I think in the spirit of the future cast, it doesn't always need to be based on the kid saying, I'm committing in 3 days or whatever. And then you post a future cast and then you let the secret out of the bag or whatever. So I want to shoot my shot early. I'm going to shoot my shot early. And if for some reason it looks like that's trending somewhere else, I'll go and change it. But at this point, I'm going to say Hero Canoe to Ohio State is my future cast, my sleeper special. And, we'll see how we go there. But certainly every indication was really good about him having a tremendous visit to Ohio State. Learned something from talking to him. Apparently the weather here in Columbus reminds him of the weather in Germany. I've never been to Germany, so I'm going to just have to take his word for it. We did kind of talk about food a little bit. I said there is a neighborhood here called German Village. Told him where to eat, and he actually told me that he's like half Austrian. I said, well, we don't have an Austrian village, so I don't really know exactly what to tell you on that. But, really, really personable kid, really friendly kid. For somebody who I'm assuming did not grow up speaking English, I mean, just, really expressive. I mean, there was no point where we were playing the searching for a word game or anything. So, just to be able at that age to have a mastery of at least 2 languages, and we know most Europeans seem to have language skills for 3, 4, or 5. I think he could be a favorite if he ends up in Columbus.
I think so too. And I was just listening to the interview. I didn't actually get to be there and be in attendance to hear him. But yeah, he definitely has a really good personality. Something about these defensive tackles visiting Ohio State. Kristen Miller last week too provided one of the best quotes I've ever heard covering recruiting, comparing Larry Johnson to a Lamborghini. So it's been really good to kind of see the personalities of these kids shine. They haven't had the spotlight on them, in terms of in-person media interactions as much over these past 14 months due to the pandemic. So yeah, it's great that they're getting out there. They're able to showcase their skill set and also showcase their interview skills as well too.
Somebody that he went against was 2023 offensive lineman Joshua Padilla. And I think in some ways, just the whole hoopla of the PPI tour being here, which is not necessarily a new thing. They've been here before, but a lot of the assembled media was watching the defensive line group go through, but I had the opportunity to watch Josh Padilla, and then I also had the opportunity to watch him go and do some one-on-ones against Hero Canoe. And, not to get ahead to my picks for who might be some of the first 2023s to pop for Ohio State, which is a question that we got posted on the message board, but still very impressed with Joshua Padilla. Is he a finished product? No. But are any of these 2023s a finished product? No, they're not. They still have a ways to go. But, good frame, just, he seems very coachable too. I mean, he was very receptive to everything that I saw when he was working with Greg Studwawa, with the rest of the coaches. So, certainly didn't do anything, in my opinion, to hurt his stock with the Buckeyes.
And I'm glad you said Coach Stud's name there. As we know, I have a bad history of pronouncing Coach Stud's last name there. So, thank you for getting that one out the way. But yeah, with Padilla, he's one of the players that I wouldn't be surprised if he's the first commit in this 2023 class for the Buckeyes. Once again, I'm in the camp that Ohio State's first commit for 2023 is going to be an in-state pledge. That's just kind of where I'm vibing with right now. And it happened last year. I think it's going to happen again this year. They're going to really get some momentum going in the state. But yeah, Padilla would definitely be a good addition. Offensive line recruiting is obviously something that the Buckeyes have missed out on some key targets, and you want to keep those in-state guys in the state. They missed out on Blake Miller last cycle. I know Keontae Goodwin isn't an Ohio-based kid, but he's in nearby Indiana, and they missed on him too. So you want to keep those prospects close to home, especially with a guy like Padilla at a school you're very familiar recruiting. At least in over the past decade or so, and then you're also recruiting Emil Wagner out of there too. So yeah, I definitely believe Padilla. It's a really good shot at Padilla being in this class, and I'm glad that you guys got to see him in person this past week.
Another player that we had the opportunity to see, and I had a chance to speak with his dad some during drill work, is Hawaii linebacker Tausili Akana. And he did not have an Ohio State offer coming in. That was remedied shortly after his visit, as he picked up an Ohio State offer, making a tour around the states, because obviously it's not easy to go back and forth and do all of that. So very intriguing player. I mean, still very lean. I mean, he's not, you're not looking at him and seeing a Mike or anything like that. But even with all of that, they did take the opportunity to have him work out with Larry Johnson, as well as kind of a rush in, doing some rush in type of work. So, a very intriguing prospect in terms of what you've seen there. We have him at 6'3", 215. A lot of room on that frame to fill out. I mean, he's got, a lot of lateral quickness, a lot of speed. I think a lot of that's still going to be there if you put 20 pounds on him. I certainly see him playing around 235, 240. Somebody who's just really impressive. Ohio State doesn't necessarily go to Hawaii and land a lot of kids, but I think that the net is getting wider and wider and wider in terms of Ohio State's recruitment over the years.
Yeah, once again, we always talk about how Ohio State's brand is one of the biggest national brands in the country, and they're going to be appealing to prospects. Whether it's in Washington with Emeka Egbuka or in Jacksonville, Florida with Jaheim Singletary. So it's no surprise that they dished out an offer to Akana, especially since he had 24 offers already at that point. So he's a prospect that's well known in the 2023 cycle. We don't have him ranked just yet, but I imagine that will change when our next update comes out. So linebackers is definitely going to be an interesting position, especially to see how they finish off, Ohio State, I should say, finishes off the 2022 cycle, and then heading into 2023, what they decide to do. But yeah, definitely good to get in early with somebody of Akana's caliber.
I'm going to jump ahead to, still staying on the 8th. We had the opportunity to see Treyon Webb, somebody we spoke to on our Southern Swing, out of Trinity Christian School, out of Jacksonville, 6 foot, $188. Certainly somebody that, a talented runner, a talented pass catcher. The part of his drill work that I got a chance to see was out on the grass fields as he was going through catching passes with Tony Alford and a couple of other assistants and whatnot. Somebody that certainly could continue that Duval to Columbus pipeline, certainly seems to be saying the right things as Joseph had the opportunity to catch up with him post-visit.
Yeah, Trayon was super high on the Buckeyes following the visit. Just everything about it stood out to him. The atmosphere, the campus, Coach Alford specifically, being able to talk with Marcus Crowley. Speaking of that Duval to Columbus connection, Marcus is one of them, and obviously Sean Wade, and then now in the 2022 class with Jaheim Singletary. And Trayon just came out the visit saying that Ohio State is on top for him at this time. He's going to continue to take his visits, but the Buckeyes really have to like where they stand with him. If I had to, we're going to talk about, we're going to answer a question here about the first 5 commits for 2023. But I mean, I would not be surprised if after taking these visits this month, Trayon decides, to pull the trigger and, commits to Ohio State. So, I could definitely see him in this class. Tony Alford has done an excellent job of building a relationship with him. Webb, during that Southern Swing trip, he referred to Alford as a father figure. And that's something that we noticed with Alford as we did that Southern Swing trip is he really prioritizes forming relationships with these kids, forming relationships with their parents and family members as well. So, yeah, everything is definitely lining up here for the Buckeyes and his recruitment, and what yet another solid addition it would be if they're able to land him.
Exactly. So let's, and I'm sure I'm missing some kids from the 8th, but we're already 20 minutes in, so let's kind of move on to the 9th, and we'll kind of stay at the same position, or at least the same part of the country with Richard Young out of Lehigh Acres, somebody else that we had the opportunity to see. He certainly drew a crowd. Let me tell you, he was over on the same side of the field as the quarterbacks were, and generally the quarterbacks always draw the attention because everybody wants to be a quarterback evaluator. We want to see this and we want to see that. But once Richard Young started going through his workouts with Tony Alford, they were very impressive. He certainly looks the part. I mean, if you were to sit there and say, okay, we're creating a running back out of a laboratory, Richard Young might be the guy. And then he took his shirt off at the end of it. And of course, it's just like, this is a kid who's going into his junior year of high school. And I mean, he looked like one of those, statues of like a Greek god. I mean, it was, and without sounding creepy or weird. I mean, they didn't look like that back in my day. And, I graduated high school in '89, and I can assure you they didn't look like that back in my day. So somebody very impressive. And we had the opportunity to talk to both he and his coach during Southern Swing. And this isn't just some sort of passing fancy. This isn't just some sort of chance to go visit Ohio State for the heck of it. There is a legitimate, strong interest there.
Yeah, there's absolutely a legitimate interest here. If you're going to take pretty much what was the equivalent to an official visit in terms of being there for 3 days, and that means you do have some legitimate interest in the school. This is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out because Alabama is a strong contender in this one, and what Buckeye fans always want to see is Ohio State, win against Alabama. Because at this point, we brought up Caleb Brown, but Ohio State's kind of expected to win those battles against, Michigan for a prospect that they really want. Obviously there's certain positions that Michigan may be more equipped at recruiting in certain areas and also, in state as well, as you saw with Will Johnson. But at this point, if Ohio State wants a kid and they're going after him against Michigan, they're more likely to win than not. Whereas with Alabama, that's a school that if Ohio State wants to get over that hump and win a national championship with Day at the helm, they have to win these types of battles. So, there's other schools that are in the mix. The in-state Florida Gators are one that, to pay attention to as well. There's a few other out-of-state programs, but it really feels like this one's going to boil down to Ohio State and Alabama. And wow, I think it's too early right now to predict. I think Richard could take this out, to the very end of his recruitment. And I'm not going to, look into my crystal ball here that's hiding underneath of my desk and say, okay, in a year and a half, Richard Young is going to commit to this school. No, I won't do that. But I definitely think Ohio State is going to be one of the top 2 or 3 contenders as his recruitment narrows down.
Could you just imagine? We talked about how Ohio State was able to put together a class with Trevion Henderson and Evan Pryor. If they somehow find a way to put a class together with Trayon Webb and Richard Young, I mean, that's that's just borderline criminal with how that would be. And you could sit there with Evan Pryor, very talented pass catcher. I mean, he certainly is kind of a Swiss Army knife. I think in some ways you can say that too with Treyon Webb. And then, Richard Young is just, that class. I mean, he's not a 6'3" guy. He's 6'1", a true 6'1". But I mean, he can make you miss, but he can also bowl over you. And I think that once you get him into a strength and conditioning program, even though he's already all rocked up, I think that you could still get 10 more pounds of muscle on that, no problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And another name that I do want to bring up, since we're talking about running backs, is Justice Haynes, a top 100 prospect out of Georgia. He, you remember we talked about it last week with like dream interviews in terms of the quotes that you get because they're very truthful and honest. He told me this visit was one for the ages. It blew my mind away. Like, he was very impressed. It was only a 1-day visit, but he enjoyed, once again, being able to break down film with Coach Alford, touring the campus. Steele Chambers, who went to his high school, Blessed Trinity, someone that he spoke with that he knows. So, yeah, Justice Haynes is another name to pay attention to. Specifically, he liked the part that of his visit when Ryan Day said that you're my guy for 2023. He really feels like a priority for Coach Day. So, yeah, Ohio State could easily land 2 of those 3 prospects, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Absolutely. And, let me stop before we get moving on still on the 9th and say, if you're not a member of Buckeye Grove, now's the time to get on board. Use offer code VISITS2021. Get a free trial through August 10th. Now, you're going to get all your coverage here through June. You're going to get into July. Big Ten Media Days for football is at the end of July. Why not? Why not take that shot? Just get on board. Use offer code VISITS2021. If you have any questions, email me at kevin@buckeyegrove.com. I've got it down below on the scroll before I change the scroll out. But, had to make, got to pay some bills here. So, get on board. We'd love to have you. I want to keep talking about kids that we saw on Wednesday. And another Floridian, Shamar Stewart, number 36 in the nation, 6'5", 260 defensive end, and out of Monsignor Pace. And we didn't get to see him necessarily do any real football activities. Pulled a little something before one-on-ones, but honestly, they didn't have enough offensive linemen there at that camp, I think, to really put up much resistance there. So it may have just worked out for the best, but maybe one of the most impressive camp guys that I've seen in years. And I would have said that about Gabriel Harris just a week prior. And then Shamar Stewart was just even more ridiculous with what he was able to do. But once again, it's a South Florida recruitment, so buckle up. You never know what's going to happen there. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild one. But he certainly was all smiles and saying the right things after camp.
Yeah, he said all the right things, and I've actually had an opportunity to speak with Shamar in person back when he was a sophomore. He went to University of Florida, took a visit there, and I spoke with him. A really well-reserved kid, doesn't talk too much to the media, doesn't provide too much in his recruitment, but I think he's somebody who can honestly take this down to the finish line and evaluate all of his options. The nearby Miami Hurricanes should be looked at as a threat. LSU too. He took a visit to Baton Rouge earlier this month. And then also Ohio State, if the Buckeyes really want him and they really make a strong push for him, I wouldn't be surprised if they can get him back on campus for an official visit. So the fact that he went up there, got a 1-day visit, got coached up by Larry Johnson, somebody that he has respect for, that's all good signs. It's a good starting point, this being his first trip up to Columbus. It still remains to be seen kind of where the Buckeyes fit into the mix. They're in his top 10 right now. He still seems to be evaluating all of those options, but yeah, just definitely a good starting out point for the Buckeyes here.
Another player I want to single out is Keith Sampson, a 6'3", 285 defensive tackle out of New Bern, North Carolina. He probably would have been a star of the defensive line group, if not in the same group with Shamar Stewart. Because every bit of what I saw of Keith Sampson was very impressive, especially when thinking he's an interior lineman, 285 pounds, moved well, looked good, pretty fluid. Somebody that, already has more than a dozen offers, has Alabama, has Ohio State, has Tennessee, has Florida, Florida State, UGA, the Carolina schools. Another name that I think people are going to have to keep an eye on. That's not a prediction that he's going to end up at Ohio State. Ohio State certainly has been able to get in and recruit North Carolina in the past. This is a player, though, that's from the eastern part of the state, not the Charlotte area. So, just wait and see here.
Yeah. It took exactly what I was going to say. Ohio State has signed a product out of North Carolina in 3 straight recruiting cycles, the most recent being Evan Pryor. They also have Benji Gosnell committed in this class too. So, they're definitely familiar with recruiting the state. Keith Sampson being defensive lineman, obviously once again praised Coach Johnson when talking with media members after. Once again, still just a little early in his recruitment. He's 2023. We're not going to, you said you're not going to make any bold predictions at this stage for him, especially since he has so many offers and he's probably going to continue to pick up offers as he goes on these camp tours. But Ohio State recruiting well in North Carolina, paired with Coach Johnson's resume, you definitely have to like where Ohio State, the potential for Ohio State's chances here.
And I'm going to wrap up the rest of talking about the recruiting weekends or the camps because we need to move on. A lot of kids that we haven't gotten to. Be sure to keep it locked in over on Buckeye Grove as we catch up with more and more of them with quick updates or whatnot. But, we've seen some great kids from 23, from 24. It's amazing to think of how quickly the cycle has been moving and that we're already onto this. But as I was explaining on that local Columbus radio show, you lose a whole year in 2020 in terms of in-person evaluations or whatnot. So Ohio State certainly is having to speed up on what it's doing in terms of these younger guys because you weren't on their campuses seeing high school games or whatnot. You were only getting film. And as I've said, you can give me a 3-star and 2 full games and I can make him look like a 5-star. I mean, as long as he has a couple plays, if you cut the tape right, you can make anybody look pretty good. So, this is a good opportunity for these guys to be under the expert eyes of these coaches and be evaluated like that. So, huge. Ohio State still has 3 more camps coming up. I believe, 3 because they had 6. So 3 more camps coming up, and a lot more kids will be coming in through those. But any final thoughts on the visits before we shift gears to the upcoming official visit weekend?
No, I just thought it was actually really impressive that, some of these top guys were camping at the event as well. Because someone like Richard Young, just all he has to do is step on campus. He has an offer. He's going to continue to be recruited. But, for him to showcase his skill set, in front of, us and also Ohio State staff, it really kind of goes to show the competitor mentality that someone like him has, someone like Christian Miller, Shamar Stewart. So, these are guys that, they'll have Ohio State offers. They didn't need to be evaluated. They're not looking to earn an offer or something like that, anything along those lines. So I thought that's what I kind of took away from these visits, along with what you said with the in-person evaluation of 2023s and 2024s. The fact that these top guys went on the campus for, with the intention of unofficially visiting, but also camp too. I thought that was pretty impressive.
All right, let's change our gears to the second official visit weekend. I will then change the scroll and let me take that one down. I need to make a change on it on the date. But Joseph just wrote a great update on who is expected to be in town for this official visit weekend. And, let's kind of take it in bite-sized pieces the way that you posted it on the board. And let's start with offensive line, 3 major targets who are going to be in town. I think certainly one of them seems to be the one that fits the best in terms of where the relationships are, but you never know until you take a swing. So take a swing at all 3.
Absolutely. And, Jalen Early is the one that, I believe Ohio State has the best chance at landing at this time. And we've talked about him, plenty of times in the past, but I'll kind of give a rundown. The Buckeyes, specifically Greg Studrawa and also Kennedy Cook, they've done an excellent job of forming a relationship with him. His mom is, placing a really big emphasis on academics. She's going to be accompanying him during this visit. And I expect Ohio State to really put a huge emphasis on their education, what they'll provide. And also there's opportunities there too, because Ohio State, with the misses that they've had over the past few cycles, it opens up the opportunity for somebody like Early to step in and potentially get some playing time early in his career. Pun intended there, early in his career. But switching over to Carson Hinsman, he's interesting one. I said he was one of the more interesting visitors just because he doesn't have an offer just yet. And I thought initially that they would have wanted him to get in town, do a workout, and then give an offer and maybe explore an official visit. But as Mark Pantoni told media members last month, you actually can't have a private workout. It was Erin Dunstan, on-campus recruiting director. She said that you can't have, in-person workouts during official visits. So Hinsman isn't going there to work out in front of the staff and potentially earn an offer. Based off what, this is pure speculation. In my opinion, I believe the Buckeyes really want to gauge his interest. He's somebody who's kind of approaching a decision. Do you want to extend this late offer and then him commit somewhere else, specifically to like an Alabama, and then Alabama gets to say, hey, we had a victory over Ohio State, one of the schools in his recruitment? Or, do you want to see, hey, is he actually interested in the Buckeyes? Would he really consider us? Let's extend an offer. So Hinsman told me that Ohio State's one of the 5 schools he's looking at right now. He definitely has interest in them, but I think an offer will kind of depend on how much interest he shows them during this visit. And last one, Joe Brunner, out of Wisconsin, seems to be a Badgers lean, but he has Ohio State in kind of his unofficial top 3, along with Notre Dame and Wisconsin. Just wrapped up a visit to Wisconsin. We'll be taking one to Notre Dame next weekend. I don't really see Ohio State winning out here. Neither do I see Notre Dame winning out, but who knows? A visit can change anything.
Exactly. It's just strangely enough that Ohio State has the top 2 players from the state of Wisconsin on visits this weekend, with Brunner being number 1 and the number 63 prospect overall in the nation, then Hinsman being number 2 and the number 88 prospect. And it wouldn't be the state of Wisconsin if these top prospects were not offensive linemen. And that's the reason why Wisconsin has been so competitive through the years, is just because it's been able to keep these kids home. And if they don't end up going there, they were going to Minnesota, but Notre Dame has just become such a hotbed for offensive linemen at this point. It'll be interesting. I agree. I think that Early is somebody that's certainly, I'm not ready to say, put him on commit watch or anything there, but he certainly said a lot of things to us on Southern Swing that made it seem like the interest is very real. It's not as much of a scary proposition of Ohio State trying to land Texas kids. They've been very successful in doing so. These other 2, with Carson and Joe, I think you're just swinging for the fences. Maybe you make contact. Maybe you hit one 450 feet to dead center. Or, if not, so be it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I view it. Specifically in Brunner's case, just, hey, what do you have to lose at this point? If the kid wants to officially visit, he has you in his top 3, the top 3 schools he's looking at. Why not at this point? I don't think he'll take too much tension away from their pursuit of Early during the visit. I think Coach Dunn and Coach Cook are going to make sure that they are able to prioritize each of them. But yeah, like you said, just kind of swinging for the fences. Best case scenario, he loves to visit, commits shortly after. Worst case scenario, he ends up at Wisconsin or Notre Dame, which wouldn't be a terrible loss for the program. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Let's move to the next position. That's defensive back, with Ephesians Prysock and Austin Jordan. And Austin Jordan just within the last 15 minutes tweeted a pin that he's in Columbus right now. So we know that one has started. Austin Jordan is another player that we got to see during Southern Swing out of Denton Ryan High School in the state of Texas, while Prysock is out of Bishop Almani. I don't know, Mission Hills, California, a school that I wasn't familiar with, and I'm a SoCal boy. So
what to say?
Yeah, I was going, well, they've built a lot of new schools since I've been there. So, just one of those things. But it'll be interesting when you sit there and you look at where Ohio State's recruitment is in terms of picking up Ryan Turner several weeks ago. How does that board shape up? I mean, who is you can commit at any point, anytime, anywhere, and who is we really like you, but you better get on board now, and who is let's let the things breathe a little bit.
Yeah, this one is just based off what you said, with Ryan Turner committing and Ohio State having 3 of the top 22 cornerbacks in the 2022 class committed at this time. They have a lot of talent at cornerback. Does someone like Prysock or Jordan look at that and say, hey, do I want to be the fourth guy in this class, or do I want to be, number one or number two in another class? So that's something that they're going to have to evaluate. The fact that they're still taking the visits definitely is encouraging for the program. It shows that they still have legitimate interest. And, based off what I was told a few weeks ago, they still are takes for the Buckeyes. So, I think it's kind of a wait and see, especially with these two, since they don't really like talking with the media too much. Jordan appears to be an Oklahoma lean. That was the case when we visited him. It appeared to be that Oklahoma was in the lead, and I don't see how Ryan Turner's commitment to Ohio State helps the Buckeyes in their pursuit of him. Prysock is kind of, he's one of those unknowns. We haven't spoken to him in a while. He doesn't do many interviews. I'm supposed to speak with him on Monday, later in the day. So I'm really interested in that conversation and hearing his thoughts on the Buckeyes. But yeah, these are kind of two of the unknowns in terms of this official visit weekend as it pertains to, how do they feel about potentially being the fourth cornerback to commit in this class.
And Prysock's a bit of a unicorn, being one of those 6'3" corners, which, you have to ask the question, is he a corner? Is he a safety playing corner right now? So you just don't know, because we're not that far removed from the idea of a 6'3" corner being just laughable. There's just no way. And now we're starting to see some guys who have the hips to be able to do that. I've not had a chance to watch a lot of Prysock at this point, but he certainly is as a Rivals 250 guy. There is a belief that this guy can play some ball. Probably ends up staying West Coast, but again, not somebody that any of us know a ton about, because he doesn't really talk to the media.
Yeah, Coach Combs likes his, long arms. On top of being 6'3", he has long arms, of course, speed, athleticism there too. So I think that, look, at this point, Ohio State, whether it's, the offensive line or, defensive backs, they're not going to be dead set on saying, hey, you're going to be a cornerback at the next level, and that's it. There's no other option for you. If the kid, can play safety, and that's what they need him to play, or if he wants to play corner, I think he's capable of doing either of those two. So it's going to be kind of interesting, specifically with as I mentioned before, the future cast rolling in for Zion Branch, Xavier and Wongpud looks like an Ohio State lean too. So that's part of the the conversation I want to have with Prysock on Monday. Where does Ohio State really like you at, and if it's corner, you fine with being the fourth one in, or if it's safety, what if a guy like Branch and Wongpud joins in? What will be the ramifications of that? But yeah, like you mentioned, just not a lot to go off of, behind the scenes based off what he's told us, since he's only spoken with us once. So yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing.
Let's jump ahead to the defensive line. A couple of we got a defensive end and a defensive tackle who will be in town this week. Curtis Neal, 6'2", 310 defensive tackle out of Huff High School, Cornelius, North Carolina, same school that produced Evan Pryor, and then Wilfredo Ibar out of Cheshire, Connecticut, Cheshire Academy. Again, this is going to be another one of those situations of how the dominoes fall in certain things too, because you have to wonder what the situation is if Hero Kanu really has gone from being just a guy to somebody who maybe Ohio State is very interested in and they believe is interested in them. Does that change the numbers on the board? Whereas, Kanu is not going to be that massive 1 tech or 0 tech. He's going to be more of a 3 tech, whereas Curtis Neal is going to be that plogger. He's going to be a 1, in my opinion. And then with Ibar, another guy who really just doesn't talk to the media all that much. You just don't necessarily know where his mind is. And then, and I'll even throw this at you. You had the opportunity to talk with the publisher of our Wisconsin site, who seems to be pretty bullish on Neal ending up with the Badgers. Really seemed to be an Ohio State-Wisconsin battle. Do the things that I just mentioned maybe play into that? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. John McNamara, the publisher of our Wisconsin site, went in and submitted a future cast, and this guy's 94.4% correct on his future cast prediction. So if he submits one, he generally knows what he's talking about. And this is on the heels of Neal's official visit to Wisconsin. Definitely I want to see how this one plays out. I don't think the Buckeyes should be ruled out. We talked about how well they've recruited in North Carolina. They also have his former teammate Evan Pryor there. He's close friends with Evan. Evan even tweeted out at him yesterday for Buckeye Nation to show him some love. So they have a close connection. Neal likes Larry Johnson. He described the offer in April from Ohio State as a dream come true. I really want to kind of see how this one plays out, and if Ohio State can take back some of that momentum, how much do they really push for him to commit and say, hey, if you want to spot in this class, you kind of have to hurry up. We've offered double-digit defensive tackles. This is a position group we're prioritizing, and the numbers, specifically that final weekend of June when they're hosting so many on campus, so many defensive linemen, it might be beneficial to join in now than later. So, yeah, he's one that, Wisconsin has the momentum going after that first visit, but maybe he's an impressionable kid. He sees Ohio State and says, this is the school for me now. Like it's kind of a back and forth battle. But as for Ibar, you mentioned it doesn't talk with the media that much. Obviously has enough interest to be using one of his 5 officials to Ohio State, but he's one of those kids where until he gets on campus or until we get to talk with him, just better off reserving talking too much about his recruitment, since there's just so much that we don't know about. But yeah, those 2 defensive linemen will be ones paying attention to. And also I'll bring up there, we don't have it confirmed, but there is a reported official visit date for Jihad Campbell out of IMG Academy. I had spoken with a source in Columbus earlier this morning and asked if the 8 official visitors that we talked about, with Sawchuk being Gavin Sawchuk being one of them, if those were the 8 that are visiting this weekend, I had to confirm that those 8 were the ones visiting. As for Campbell, though, we're still reaching out, doing some digging there. So he's listed as a defensive end. Ohio State's now targeting him as a linebacker, but I did want to bring him up before we get into Sawchuk.
Yeah, we'll be able to do a little bit more on that once we are not live on the air, but we'll have to worry about that one here in a little bit. But you mentioned the last official visitor, and that is running back Gavin Sawchuk. He's 5'11", $175 out of the state of Colorado. It'll be interesting to see what's going on there, because it does seem in a lot of ways that focus maybe has been narrowed just to Dallin Hayden as being the number 1 back in the class. But, 1, Hayden hasn't visited yet, and 2, none of these other visits have been put off. So, I mean, it certainly seems like they want to see what Sawchuk thinks about the Buckeyes and vice versa.
Yeah, so Sawchuk hasn't visited yet, but he did take a self-guided tour back as a freshman. So he has been on campus. He liked what he saw, obviously enough for him to return. The 4 schools he's really focused on right now are Oklahoma, Ohio State, USC, Notre Dame. He just took an official visit to USC. I don't know how much of a contender they really are in his services. Oklahoma appears to be the one out in front for him, but yeah, once again, Alfred has just done a really good job here. We sing his praises, and rightfully so. He's really done a good job of keeping in contact with the Sawchucks. I say that plural because I know by speaking with his dad that, Coach Alfred reaches out to him as well. So, Sawchuk is somebody that Alfred is prioritizing. That's what I've heard behind the scenes, that, even though Hayden appears to be the number 1 target, and, I would say so, Sawchuk is somebody that they're looking at as well, because they're not opposed to taking 2 running backs again in 2 consecutive cycles. And you see that with Omarion Hampton, who's going to be on campus later this month. He's kind of the second RB that they're looking at. Also, Caleb Johnson, in-state guy out of Hamilton. He's going to be doing a private workout this upcoming week. So don't rule out 2 running backs. I don't know if those 2 would be Hayden and Sawchuk, just based on the fact that, they're 2 really talented running backs. It's hard to get those, especially in 2 consecutive cycles like they did with Evan Pryor and Trevion Henderson. And also since he appears to be an Oklahoma lean. But yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. I think Ohio State's probably 2 or 3 here in his recruitment, but Oklahoma definitely seems to have the edge.
One more name I kind of want to mention. Well, I guess technically 2 names for this weekend. Quinn Ewers is coming back out for an unofficial, and his teammate at South Lake Carroll, Landon Sampson, is supposed to be coming out with him as well. Sampson does not have an Ohio State offer at this point. Ohio State's certainly been out there, dominating at the receiver position. Sampson's a receiver. Ohio State just put out a grad transfer offer to a former Jackson State receiver through the portal. So, what are they going to play? 5 receivers? Are they going to go empty all the time? But, speaking specifically of the importance of getting Quinn Ewers back out and, his teammate Sampson and his working to try and get an offer. I mean, because right now you look and FutureCast has him 100% to Nebraska at this point, and I would expect him to end up in Nebraska if Ohio State doesn't get on board. If the Buckeyes do pull the trigger, Katie bar the door. I don't know what's going to happen then.
Yeah, and we don't have all the details confirmed. I'm supposed to be speaking with Sampson in about a couple of hours. He confirmed that he will be taking the visit this weekend. Ewers confirmed with you last week that he'll be visiting starting June 11th, which is today. And I don't know what the whole details will be, but I'm hoping to confirm it with Sampson. I would imagine, though, that Ewers is going there, and if Sampson does do a private workout, that Ewers will be throwing to him. I could be wrong there. I don't necessarily know if there's any restrictions on that, but Ewers wants to make sure that his guy looks good, and that he's going to be able to operate in rhythm with him. And obviously Sampson will go through the individual drills, but if you can have a quarterback of Ewers' caliber throwing to him, that would be really good, especially since they have that connection. Sampson had 1,200 plus yards receiving last season. He's I think about 73 receptions, and just really impressive stuff for somebody as a high school junior. And Quinn Ewers is one of the top quarterbacks out of high school in recent memory. For Sampson to be his go-to guy and to be a pivotal part in their aerial attack, I think that speaks volumes. Once again, this all comes down to how Sampson looks live to Ohio State, but they don't appear to be opposed to taking 4 receivers in this class. And if they feel like Sampson would commit right away and they like him, I wouldn't be surprised if an offer is extended and a commitment shortly follows. That wouldn't be too surprising to me.
Let me change the banners up here. All right, we're going to go to the last couple questions that we have on the message board and try and finish up strong here. The first one is, who are your first 5 2023 recruits, which I think obviously means who do we think will be the first 5 to commit? That certainly is difficult in so many ways, but, I'm going to say guys like Luke Montgomery, Brennan Vernon. Certainly Ohio State would love one to be Sonny Styles, Josh Padilla, and, to maybe hit a guy out of state. How about Carnell Tate? How about, Carnell Tate being somebody? I know that, you said that you certainly thought that Trayon Webb, because, we're not saying that 5 guys are going to commit from 23 within the next 6 weeks or whatever. And Trayon wants to take some visits or whatever, but if nobody's able to really touch Ohio State, why not somebody like that? It's not like there's not a familiarity with the school, but I guess that's my first guess in terms of not giving it a ton of thought at this point of who the first 5 could be.
Yeah, I think I would go with Luke Montgomery. I would go with Josh Padilla. I would take one of the top in-state kids, maybe Sonny Styles or Brennan Vernon. I would say one of those 2. Sorry for being vague there. Let's go with a couple of out-of-state ones. Let's say Zion Branch does decide to commit. You think his brother Zachariah Branch may be inclined to as well? We saw the family connection with Dasan McCullough, how important that plays. The ability to play with your brother. That's a huge thing. Going from the high school level to doing that at the college level, that's huge. I could definitely see Zachariah committing. And then also Trayon Webb. Trayon named Ohio State his leader. He's not somebody who's opposed to making early commitments. He committed to Georgia, the University of Georgia as a freshman, backed off that pledge earlier this year. So would I be surprised if he takes his visits this month and decides that the Buckeyes were the best out of them and commits? No, I wouldn't be. So, yeah, to go back to answering the question, I would probably, I would say Montgomery, Padilla, either Styles or Vernon, Zachariah Branch, and then Trayon Webb. But who knows at this point? Like, once again, I don't have a crystal ball underneath here. I'm not looking into it. If not, I would have won the lottery by now and off living in Cancun, where my Los Angeles Lakers are at right now. But that's can't really predict. And the next one we're going to be talking about is a prediction one as well. But those will be my 5 for now.
Yeah, and the next one is a prediction for the remaining recruits in this class, and I've done no preparation here. I can't even say for sure that I'm 100% locked down on what the final number is going to be. As I've said time and time again, you base it on the 85. You don't base it on the 25 as much. They'll make it work. You green shirt kids, so you're able to back count them. It's like caponomics. You need to have somebody with spreadsheets and slide rules and everything else to keep track of all of that. So, oh boy, I'm gonna let you we'll just kind of. How about we both just kind of jump in on this one together, because I don't really. I don't know. I mean, I certainly think that as I'm pulling up my offer list, because
I think we should start off with the not guarantees. There's no guarantees in recruiting, but the near guarantees. Dallin Hayden. All right, Emil Wagner. Let's put those 2 in there. I don't think Jalen Early's there yet, but I may change my opinion after this official visit weekend. Can we say a Landon Sampson? If Landon's tape is as good as it is, and he showcases that this weekend and Ohio State offers, I don't think Sampson decides to choose Nebraska over Ohio State. So could he be the 4th wide receiver? And as for offensive linemen, in terms of the interior of the line, I don't see Hinsman ending up in this class. Neither do I see fellow Wisconsin native Billy Schrauf. Neto Umzolo. Out of Texas, he's high on Ohio State. We talked with him during Southern Swing, so I definitely could see him there. As for defensive line, yeah, that's just way up there in my opinion. You mentioned Hero Kanu, but at this point it could be anybody. Could Amari Abar, who really liked the visit, and Alabama's a top contender there. Could he be the defensive end, the big time defensive end? Caden Curry, there's just so many along the defensive line. It's hard to predict.
Kristen Miller. I mean, you don't.
Kristen Miller. Yep. There's a lot of guys along the defensive line. Maybe you can read out some names, but
Kenyatta Jackson. I mean, Ryan Turner's teammate. I mean, you don't know. I mean, we don't see package deals happen all that often, but we do at times. But generally it's because 2 guys came to the same decision, not because of one or the other. But I like Ohio State's chances with him. I'm going through the list. I mean,
Chris McCullen, he's somebody who's picked up some national attention. He really liked Ohio State coming out of that offer. Kenneth Grant, nearby Indiana, just got offered.
Right.
There's just
what about Nick James? I mean, he's somebody that just took the visit last week, said all the right things, but you don't know, because they're guys that don't talk a bunch. So it's going to be hard to tell. I mean, what are they looking at in terms of potentially another linebacker after losing Deshaun McCullough? I mean, do they sit there and do they address that? Is Eni White somebody who's still going to be on the board? We've talked time and time again about Sean Murphy, and everything was sky high there, and then it seemed to fade, but it hasn't faded away completely, because he's still somebody that we're talking about. So you don't. Yeah. You don't know with him.
As for DBs, I mean, maybe you can go Zion Branch, probably the closest one, just because he's supposed to be committing soon. The fact that he did take that USC visit makes me just a little bit more hesitant. But Ohio State knocked it out the park with him. Xavier Nwankpa, I thought it was really interesting that he told me that they're eyeing him for the bullet position, because now you have Kai Stokes and Zion Branch eyed for that free safety in those single high safety looks that they're looking at, and you have Nwankpa, who would fit the bullet position perfectly. That's what they wanted Deshaun McCullough to come in and fill, that outside linebacker safety type role. He's a very powerful player with good ball skills. So, Nwankpa, would it be surprising if Nwankpa and Branch commit? No, because they're eyeing them for pretty much 2 different roles. And then as for cornerback, does a Jaden Bellamy out of New Jersey decide, I really like Ohio State over, Clemson, Notre Dame, Rutgers. I want to go there. There's a lot, specifically that 4th cornerback spot. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But as for the safeties, I would not be surprised if Branch and Nwankpa both end up in this class.
Exactly. So Mike 11. Sorry, did we answer your question exactly? No, but there's just no way, and I know you weren't asking for us to put it down in stone tablet or anything like that, but there's just so much of one thing leads to something else or whatever. Maybe it's something that we'll take as a homework assignment and have ready for next week once I get back from Atlanta from the 5-Star Challenge. But I don't know. I don't know if I want anything. I don't know if I want any written or spoken record of me predicting the class here mid-June, only to have it boomeranged back onto me in January about how wrong I am. The way that you keep a good batting average is by not swinging and missing that much. So I don't want to miss to that. I don't want to miss that much here.
And you brought up a good point. We don't even know the number at this point. Ohio State doesn't know the number. It's it was described to me, a very fluid situation. I think as we get to September, October, I know it's kind of cheating there because they'll have, presumably 5, 6, 7 more commitments in this class, make it a little bit easier. But we'll have a better idea of what that final number will look like, and maybe we'll have a better answer. But it's wide open right now. There's going to be prospects, 2022 prospects who get offered, in my opinion. We've seen that this month, and I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see it as players get on campus. So, yeah, it's too up in the air at this point to really make a solid prediction for, hey, these will be the final guys. But we kind of have an idea of who could be, those remaining commits. It's all a domino effect, too, because if this guy commits, does that entice this guy to, stay or does he decide I want to go to another school? It's all domino effect, but hopefully we can have a better answer in a few weeks.
Well, we've just hit and crossed over the hour mark on here, so I think it's about time to call it a show so we can get ourselves ready for this weekend and get our assignments ready. But, I want to thank everybody for being part of the show. Joseph, I want to thank you. I know that you probably talked 60% of the time here, so I don't want to throw it right back to you. But any final thoughts, anything that I didn't bring up that we didn't cover?
No, as you mentioned earlier in the show, join right here. I'm trying to get my finger, right there. Visit 2021. Sign up for a free trial for Buckeye Grove. We put out, I think, over 50 pieces of recruiting content, 50 recruiting updates so far this month. We're having all these updates on all these kids. You don't want to miss out on it. It's free. I mean, like I said before, it's free. It doesn't get much better than that. So, yeah, join up, sign up, email Kevin if you have questions. Also follow me on Twitter, Joseph A. Hastings, Joseph A. Hastings, I should say. Send me a DM. Let us know your thoughts on this live show and what we can do next time that you would like to see.
Absolutely. And, I agree with Joseph on everything he said there. Be sure to follow him on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. It's there in my name right there. But
one last thing, Kevin. I just had it confirmed to me that Jihad Campbell will be on campus this weekend for an official visit. So
he will. So we will get that. We will get that notated on his profile on Rivals, and that's one more player to add to the list. Tremendous player there in Jihad. We will have a chance to talk about him next week, but we've already started to downshift our way out of this show. So before I change my mind, I want to thank everybody. For Joseph, I'm Kevin. We'll talk to you here very soon.